after having heard from the co-chairs, we will now hear from those who work in the field day to day with real, I would say, people that fall into this category. And before we hear from them, I sincerely just want to reiterate our strong commitment and support for the phenomenal work that they do with these women. I now have the honor to first welcome Ms. Heather Ibrahim Lathers, who is the founder of Global Fund for Widows, to make her remarks. Ms. Lathers, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Your Excellencies. On behalf of the Global Fund for Widows and the 350 million widows worldwide, we would like to thank the Mission of Niger for their leadership on today's Arria Formula meeting and co-sponsors for their vision. Your Excellency, under the Women, Peace, and Security agenda, the Council has sought to better understand and address the gender dimensions of conflict. The death or disappearance of a spouse, unfortunately, is one of the ways women are disproportionately impacted, and yet widowhood is not named within a single council product. When she becomes a widow, a woman not only faces gender-based discrimination, as my colleagues before me have indicated, but is susceptible to a number of harms. With rates of widowhood among the female population being as high as 80% in active conflict zones, it's imperative that the Council expand its consideration of women in all of their diversities to include widows, the wives of the disappeared, and forced marriage widows in order to close protection gaps in its decision-making. Very little disaggregated data has been collected on widows, making it difficult for decision makers to develop responses to security challenges. But to give an example, in the Iraqi Hamam al-Alil refugee camp, where data has been collected, it was found that over 1/4 of the displaced families were headed by widows, while another small UNHCR study showed of Syrian refugees, 145,000 are widow or female-headed families. And our partners across Iraq, Jordan, and Afghanistan are witness to camps each over 3,000 families strong, where there are no men, only widows. These numbers, Your Excellencies, are not de minimis, and the data is needed. Your Excellency, we urge the Council to recognize widows as a marginalized group in conflict and post-conflict settings in order to ensure the protection of their rights by acknowledging the unique violations that they endure. As mentioned, this includes disinheritance, property grabbing, institutionalized discrimination, sexual violence, forced recruitment, forced marriage or remarriage, and the inability to transfer nationality to their children. The implications of continued omission of widowhood includes drastically limited livelihood, removal of children from school, child labor, child marriage, surrender to human traffickers, and suicide. Your Excellency, there are additional vulnerabilities when that widow is a child. The child widow results from the forcible capture and marriage of girls and is common practice among armed and extremist groups. Upon her release, escape, or return, child widows survivors remain stained by their association. Current practices stop short of acknowledging the lived reality of these girls as a widow and the compounding factors of discrimination that ensue. Offered today via written statement by our partner WIDO of Nigeria is the harrowing testimony of a 3-time Boko Haram child widow. Your Excellency, it is challenging to respond to the needs of millions of widows during conflict and post-conflict, but is made ever more complicated when politics comes into play. The wives of the missing and forcibly disappeared are not included in any of the numbers that I have mentioned. Both state and non-state actors are unlikely to take accountability for such acts, which would allow the wives of the disappeared to move on. Without a death certificate, a woman cannot inherit. She and her children may not be able to access protections that would even meet just their basic needs. And these numbers are also not de minimis. Our best estimates from our partners in the field are in the hundreds of thousands in Syria and Afghanistan, 90,000 in Sri Lanka, and 86,000 in Colombia. The Council should be mindful of these gender sensitivities across its humanitarian and political considerations. Your Excellency, these challenges present us with an opportunity for historic action. His Excellency Ambassador Anwarul Chowdhury of Bangladesh, credited as initiator of UN Security Council Resolution 1325, has become a strong advocate of widows. His Excellency has suggested an amendment to Resolution 1325 to include widows, ensuring them critical visibility before the Council. We welcome this recommendation. Protection through a Security Council product will ensure that future security and humanitarian actors are charged to address the unique needs of widows. And widows are not merely victims of conflict, but can be agents of sustainable peace. Constituting 50% of the female population in post-conflict contexts, widows shoulder their nation's social and economic recovery and are a necessary part of reconciliation efforts. As such, recognition through a SC product would ensure that widows receive access to justice and reparations and official recognition for their role in leading the charge for lasting peace. The Council today has an opportunity to guide humanitarian and political responses during and post-conflict that can turn widowed women's focus from surviving to thriving. By closing the protection gap for widows, a pathway to equal, just, and inclusive post-conflict institutions and societies can be created and lasting peace attained. I am honored to have received your audience and consideration today. Thank you.